All right, guys, welcome to the Guest Life Podcast, episode 18. We got big Matt Ferro here. Matt Ferro is a financial consultant for IG Wealth Management. Matt also used to be a fucking Hulk and a fitness professional, to say the least, but he was a staple in the fitness industry. So we'll talk about a little bit about his journey, how he used to train my out of shape body and whip me in. And yeah, guys, just thank you so much for tuning in. We're on, if you guys have an opportunity to hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube, obviously follow us on Instagram, send us some love. We're at episode 18 now, which is a little bit wild, but it's amazing to see kind of the impact that we're making with the people within our community in Hamilton, and also just getting some absolutely quality people on the show, which I think it just sets us apart. Thank you so much for tuning in to all the listeners, but also if you guys have any comments or any ways that we can improve the show, we'd love to hear it. So Matt, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I've known Matt coming up on 5 years now. Originally I met his brother, Nate, and Matt ended up training me at Good Life when I was kind of down and out. And I needed a push, and so I went to the biggest, strongest guy I knew.
I bought my shirts before we even met too, so we had support from day one.
Yeah, and now Matt works at IG, so we're gonna talk a little bit about his journey and kind of get right into it. So
yeah, no, I'm excited, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So where did it all begin?
Yeah, I guess like you said, I started off in the fitness world, and then that kind of eventually led me towards finance, where I work with IG now, which has been an absolute blast. It's crazy to think that I'm already in my third year, which is wild. Got a pretty great team that I'm working with there. I love the fact that yes, I'm working with a company, but it's still my business, right? So I still have a great team of specialists that are behind me. I have a wealth specialist, a tax specialist, an insurance specialist, a mortgage specialist. So it's great just having a good group of people, well-rounded group of people that are helping me with, putting together all-encompassing financial plans for my clients. So it's been great. I've built a great book up so far. It's just the beginning, so I'm excited to see, where it takes me going forward.
Yeah. So one thing you'll learn in this podcast is Matt's a pretty humble guy. He doesn't like to brag or boast, but he's definitely, talking about personal finance. I know myself, we're Matt's helping me right now just work through like day-to-day spending. I know for a lot of people it's a challenge, especially with credit cards and just payments being automatic and online shopping, especially. It can get away from you so quickly, and I'm definitely someone that's happened to. So how do you find people in terms of them opening up to talking about their personal finances?
Yeah, like talking about finance is probably like the toughest thing for people to do. It's just that one topic that people just kind of, keep close to the chest. They don't like opening up, especially to a potential stranger or someone they don't have that kind of relationship with just yet. So I find just being like genuine and sincere with your conversation with people and letting them know that like, hey, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to, provide a solution to a problem. Goes a long way, and it allows people to open up to at least the idea of having a conversation with you. So I'm not trying to pry and dig, on day one. It's just a matter of seeing who you are as a person. Do we even mesh? Like, are we compatible to have a client consultant relationship? And then just building from there, showing them kind of work that me and my team do, what we've done for people in similar situations. And then hopefully they're able to find, some correlation there. Like, hey, you want to know what? This makes sense, let's sit down and discuss this a little bit further. So I find the softer approach has worked a lot better for myself, and I think it makes my clients and the prospects feel a lot more at ease with eventually disclosing that information to me, which also will help us build, a little bit more of an intricate and complete financial plan.
Yeah. So, and you really do, right? Like, I mean, I think for a lot of people, you just avoid the conversation because for me, it was embarrassment. Right. It's hard to hear you're overspending or, you're just, going off the rails. I remember I quit drinking, so I picked up smoking cigars. like, it was like coffee and cigar instead of beers.
Yeah.
And I think it was $1,200 a week on the cigars, or I'm sorry, no, a month on cigars.
Guilty, I joined you for a couple of them.
But it's like, well, okay, I'm not spending money on booze, and I'm trying to be more healthy. Well, smoking cigars and spending money on cigars might not be a double negative, but I think it's interesting once you see it on paper, and I think for myself anyway, talking from experience, is a little bit of embarrassment. So I think you've done nothing but and I know you, which helps a little bit. But I think there's also that little bit of like, I don't want my buddy to know that I'm overspending. But you made it so comfortable of a transition. And again, that's what I'd like to go back to, your fitness. So when you started in fitness, I mean, I remember, I was a big guy, but I was still strong. And, you always get that kind of discomfort of, am I going to, have to ask someone for help?
Yeah.
So I think, let's talk a little bit about your fitness career and how it allowed you to kind of, like I said, he's modest guys, but absolutely destroy the beginning of his IG career.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's crazy to think that how it was, like I said, it was a lifetime ago almost, it feels, right? Because I was in the fitness industry for 10 years.
Wow.
So I built like a good business there, a great following. I think I started when I was 20.
And what were some of your accomplishments in that industry?
Yeah, so quite a bit. It's funny because I didn't even intend to start with it. Like, I didn't think I was going to go into competing and all that kind of stuff. I was just like anyone else at Good Life. I was a 150-pound noodle, right? Like, I had negative muscle. Just seeing these like godlike people at the gym, you're like, okay, that's something I can never get to, just based on my body type. And then eventually I was just like, you know what? I'm going to give myself a goal. So I said, next year on my birthday, what at that time might have been 20 or 21, I want to do a show, just for the heck of it, just see if I can do it to test myself. So I did it, and then I ended up placing third in my first one, which was like awesome. And then, like I'm sure anyone else who's competed will tell you, like once you have that experience once, like you kind of just get addicted, and that kind of opened the door to a career I didn't anticipate I would have.
Yeah.
So eventually, yeah, like I said, I competed, over the course of 10 years, won my pro card at, 23. And then that experience, took me to, a platform where I was, world ranked, competing in Vegas, the world championships on pay-per-view, like just stuff I would never have guessed or like had envisioned for myself, like prior to, me deciding to do the first one. So it's just wild to see, how a door can open, and then, it's almost like a rabbit hole on YouTube, right? You just go. And then you look back and you're like, well, where the heck did that come from, right? I didn't think I'd ever, be down here, but, it was pretty awesome. Some pretty cool experiences along the way too. And it definitely helped me, build some characteristics, which ultimately helped me be successful with where I am now too.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that, I've been involved with some people in the fitness industry before, and like the dedication and the meals and the planning and the hard work, like, tell us a little bit about that day-to-day process that obviously brought you to where you are now, which is, again, we'll get to it after, but absolutely thriving in a completely different industry, but very much the same, goal-oriented atmosphere and driven focus with some, awesome planning.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think that's why even when I had my first interview with IG, just where I kind of even self-realized the characteristics that I was going to be able to carry over and why I think I was going to be successful was just that, like having a hard deadline and then being able to scale it back to see what do I have to do between, now and then to get there. Like what kind of things do I have to put in place, what things do I have to be stingent on, which sacrifices do I potentially have to make in order to be successful. And I think, having experience with the fitness industry and knowing that I'm able to push myself to limits that I haven't, been yet, ultimately allowed me to, kind of just push through with the finance thing and just say, like I'll be able to get it done because I've done, other things before, regardless of whether or not this is familiar to me.
Yeah.
At least had some belief in myself, also believe in what I do is huge. But I ultimately just kind of just jumped in and just kind of just believed that I would be able to figure it out.
And walk us through, we were talking just before the show, we were talking a little bit about some of the sacrifices you were making while you were still training people full-time, and studying full-time.
Yes, like that's kind of like where, like I mentioned earlier, like in retrospect, you look back and you're like, how the hell did I do that? Or did I find time for that? But yeah, essentially it was even, it's odd how I even got into it because I was training a client at the time who was a division director with IG. He knows my dad, so he knows where I come from. He knows like my knowledge base. And we always just talked numbers and finance. He's always like, hey, Matt, like, do you plan on being here forever? And I was like, honestly, no. Like, I kind of started to lose my passion at that point for it. He's like, why don't you come meet my boss and then, just talk things over. I think where I work now would be a good fit for you. I'm like, got nothing to lose, right? So I met the regional director at the time, who's still our director now. And in the interview, I started to realize, how many things were transferable, like skill sets, planning, talking to people, building your business from nothing, things like that were, the same kind of characteristics that they were looking for. And so I was like, you know what, like, I'm realizing now that I don't have to go back to school to do this. I have to do, after work programs, get my licensing, my certifications. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll find time to do it. So let's move forward. So I gave myself a year to get everything in place. But like you said, I still gotta earn an income. I got a mortgage to pay. I got car payments. I got groceries and all that kind of stuff. So it was tough because I still had, 12, 14 clients at the time that I was training. I couldn't really tell management that I was leaving soon because I didn't want them to reassign my clients. And then that's less income for Matt, which I don't like. So every week I'd have to go into training at IG, which means I have to go home, put my suit on, go there for training for an hour, drive back. But because of my client base, I could only, allot maybe an hour and a half, hour 45 for like that full transition. And that was from Ancaster to Waterdown and then Waterdown back to Ancaster. And then there's more than a few times where, the sessions ran long in terms of my training at IG. And I had 12 minutes to make a 12-minute drive, and I'm still wearing my suit, and I can't walk in there with it. And yeah, there was a few times where I had to, fully change on the highway while driving. And if you can imagine, me putting my suit onto the hanger, onto the side rack there, my socks, my shoes, my pants, folding it properly, because God forbid I wrinkle my suit, getting changed to the, my Good Life attire, and then hitting the parking lot with 30 seconds to spare, running in, hitting the next 6 clients, and then going home, studying for 2-3 hours, going to bed and doing it again. And so at the time, you don't think about it, you just do it because it's a necessity. That's what I have to do to get, this done.
Yeah.
But looking back, you're like, oh man, that's pretty wild. And that's kind of I use that when things come up now, and it's just can I do it? And then you kind of that's why it's always good to kind of reflect on what you've done, to be okay, well, if I can do that, I can do this.
Yeah, I think taking the time to self-reflect in terms of one of the tools I was using was, if you're doing your planning, it was 5 years ago, could I imagine to be where I am today? So if I'm planning 5 years out now, let's look back 5. That was insane. Can't believe that growth. Let's look up 5. Let's start getting insane with some of our projections, right? Let's start thinking bigger.
Yeah, it's the conversations you had 5 years ago, you would were minuscule compared to what you're having now, right? The conversations that we have now when we meet is something I wouldn't have envisioned, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because you just grow naturally and you kind of don't see how far you come, which is why I always think it's good to kind of hit pause, look at how far you come, not just how much further you have to go. And I think that kind of gives you a little bit of motivation to realize, what, I've come a long way. Don't just look at how much further you have to go, but kind of appreciate, where you are in the journey as well.
That's amazing. So talk a little bit about, so now, we've hit the fitness career. Also, just so you guys are aware, he's wearing a suit today, but this guy is a moose. I used to watch him row a dumbbell on top of a dumbbell, which is I've never seen that before. So I was pretty impressed. Also a little concerned.
This suit would not have fit on previous Matt.
But you just, I love being able to experience kind of watching him grow. Because again, there's always that a little bit of self-doubt, but probably a lot of external doubt as well of, okay, yeah, how many trainers talk about getting on a training and then they just train forever. And I think that's a lot of, we talk about overconsumption and then taking massive action, which is an Ed Milet phrase, which is, just take massive action, which is just doing it. You put yourself out a year and look where you come in a year. So now you get into IG. How does that work? Because I'm pretty sure you had, 0 income?
Yeah, so because I stopped training people, I figure if I'm going to go in, I'm going all in, right? So I managed over the course of the year knowing that, my first couple months is going to be, minimum income because there's no salary, right? Your book of business is what pays you. And at the early years, you don't have a book, right? So I built a bit of a buffer for myself, which was reassuring to a degree. But it's still tough, right? Because there's still, a couple months, you start off, you bring in your warm network, your friends, your family, the ones who, are ready to move over because you put those feelers out. But then you have a couple months where it's new business and you have to go find. So you're starting from scratch, which means there's nothing coming in. So there was a couple months there where like I'm negative $4,000 every month. But if I'm doing nothing and that's the result, that's an issue. If I'm giving 110%, it just hasn't panned out yet because I'm in the early stages, that's fine. Because at least I know I'm doing actions that are eventually going to reward me. But the fact that I was able to build such a network when I worked at Good Life, saying hi to 100 people a day for 5 years, building a good following on social media with people in our community as well, and people just knowing who I am and just being a genuine person and wanting to help some people.
Yeah.
When I eventually made that switch over after putting out those feelers and saying, hey, I'm making this transition. Do you mind sitting down with me, having a conversation, just seeing what I'm doing now? That, went a long ways because people kind of expected it when I approached them saying, okay, hey, I've now moved over. It'd be great to grab a coffee and just show you what I'm doing now, right? Whether or not I get your business is kind of irrelevant. I want you to be able to refer me with confidence, should someone ever, need my services at the very least. Fortunately, a lot of them did become clients just in seeing kind of what we're offering and what we're doing. But the skills that I had from training in terms of, you have to go out there, you have to find your own clients, you have to build your own business, you have to scale it yourself, is the exact same thing I have to do with IG, right? I'm still planning. It's just now instead of, planning for someone's, fitness and health and lifestyle, it's, their finance. So it's the same conversations, it's just a different topic. So I was able to transition nicely, but it was still like a huge challenge. Like you said, there was no income. So I had to go find it. There's no bigger fire in your ass and like having bill payments and nothing's coming in, right? So I enjoy that part of, you're going to make what you go do for yourself. And so I like that. But it was absolutely as challenging as hell, right? And there's a lot of self-doubt along the way, being like, did I make the right decision? Like I'm used to doing really well, and now like there's goose eggs on that balance, and like that's not nice. So it's just a lot of kind of remind yourself of what you've done.
Yeah.
And as long as you're doing what you need to do today, it will eventually come around. Like business is not instantaneous. You know that. Like things you do today may take months for them to eventually close, which is fine. That's just how business works. But it's just a matter of always being on top of it, always, connecting with people, always making sure like you're hitting your touch points, you're following up, and eventually you will be successful. It's just, it's a bumpy road, but like as it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Obviously, that's the big saying. But I love the term patiently aggressive.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, like, patience is one thing, but I think it gets misconstrued with laziness a lot of the times. Oh, just have some patience, it'll come. It's like, no, not for me. So I know you probably don't want to talk about it, but let's talk about some of those successes that you absolutely smashed out of the park in the first couple of years, because I think, it's how do you put it into context? And for the listeners out there, you talk about just hard work and, 1 year turnaround times, 1 year until you're going to do your first show. Like, I think those timelines are so important because we're talking about, if someone's going to make a jump or someone's worried about it, and we ask the question, like I said in the podcast, why not me? Why not now? But also like, just take the first step.
Yeah.
Come up with a plan, take the first step. You don't know what the next 15 steps are going to be, but if you don't take the first one, you're never going to get there anyway. So even if you're going to fall, the Denzel quote, fall forward, but like, tell us about it.
Yeah. Like it was, I went in, like you said, with nothing but my list of, 200 people that I wanted to contact. So I made that before I started with IG. These are the people I'm going to initiate first, right? Who knows what the hell's going to come from it? Just those are my starting points, right? And like I said, patiently aggressive in terms of, even though I know some things would take time, I was still out there outreaching like crazy to more people every single day. So I had a set amount every day of outreaches I want to do to new people, whether it's LinkedIn, texting, calling, emailing, whatever it may be.
Yeah, you've been really, really active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and you have to be, right? You got to be consistent as fuck.
Yeah, you can't stop.
Like you have to. So like, and that ended up, I think, being one of the major points of my so far success, hopefully continued success, is that I'm consistent with that, even though when things are going well, still do the things that you were doing when things were not going well. So like your pipeline should never be empty regardless of how well you're doing or how busy you are. Because at some point you're not going to be busy and you're going to wish it was full. So I think it's just a matter of always being, consistent with your outreach, trying new things, whether it's, in-person events, going to other people's occasions and causes and their events, meeting new people was huge. And then fortunately, a lot of stuff I was doing was working. A lot of it didn't, but you can't succeed unless you fail a little bit, which is fine, right? You learn what doesn't work, what does work. And then me just being in my second or third month of my third year has already gotten the first 4 years of awards, which is like nice to have that recognition, and for me to have that kind of that, I guess, internal motivation that what I'm doing is working, but there's still room to improve, obviously.
Yeah, and I think like you said, he just slides it in there like so calmly, guys. But he won in his first year. You won your second year award.
Yeah,
and now you're in your third year and you won your fourth year award.
Yeah.
So I think it's just so you guys can understand the context of tiering up. It's like, they have awards so people can win them, but when you're absolutely blowing them out of the park, it's based on consistency and hard work and dedication. I think it's an amazing story to tell, coming from, to hard work, dedication, where you absolutely smashed it in the fitness industry, to correlating to that. Like in the finances, it's a completely different realm, but that work ethic and that grind, like it's hard work, it's dedication, it's consistency.
Yeah, and I was like more or less surprised when I got the words, because I'm not really focused on whatever their benchmark is. It's more so like what are my goals, and then when I get the email, I was like, oh, like that's pretty cool to see that. But like, it's not my driving force. It's not like I want to get that award. It's like I want to achieve like a lot more than just whatever the fourth year award is. There's a lot more I want to do, but it's nice to know that at least I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
And then I got recognized for it, not for anyone else, just for myself. I mean, to realize that what I'm doing is working so far. And then it's always nice when other people ask me in the industry in the first couple of years. I know I did a presentation for the first 3 people, I think, out west. It's nice to have that kind of reassurance that other people want to hear from you who are in the same position, which is nice.
And giving back to that, the people in your industry, which is your community, right? And like, I think a big misconception is that people want to keep their secrets to themselves. I find that the more successful people I speak with and talk to, the more like open knowledge they just want to share. I think the big divider is that they don't want to repeat themselves and waste their time. So I think, if you ask, for anybody listening, go out and ask those questions to those people that you admire, look up to, or a mentor for you. You'll be pleasantly surprised with how open and honest they'll be to tell you all their secrets. The hard part is acting on those secrets, right? You still have to do the work. No one got rich quick. It's not a thing.
No, yeah, and the award was nice, but the best part for me was exactly that. Like, I got to go to a couple like award lunches where I was at tables with people who were massively successful in my region, guys who I aspire to get to that level. So being at that table allowed me to ask those kinds of questions, in which case I can bring back to my practice, for me to become better. And then kind of just going back to what you said before and being able to share the information. There's no need to keep everything to yourself. You can't have everyone's business. If you did, you'd go out of business, right? Like I couldn't have 10,000 clients right now, right?
Yeah.
That would fold. Like you can't hold that. So, share your knowledge, which is why I loved when they asked me to do this, like the presentation for the new consultants out west. Because like if I can just share what I've done, and mistakes I've made and successes I've had, and that helps them, fantastic. Because I know I appreciated that. When I was in that position, when I was in my first year, like hearing from people who were still like a year or two ahead of me, but had seen success, like that's more relatable than someone who's at, 3,000 clients and $150 million book. Their actions are probably a little bit different than someone in the first year. I want to get to that point. So it's good to hear from someone who's successful in and around my area still.
Yeah, those stepping stones. So what's one of the biggest questions you're getting from your clients in terms of like, I don't know, general questions? Like, do you find that a lot of them are like very kind of entry level, or are you finding people know a little bit more than expected, or are you finding it's kind of a variance?
Yeah, it's definitely a healthy mix. Like people who you'd assume have their finances like in order and know kind of what they're in, don't have an idea what they're doing, and you'd be surprised, people who you wouldn't assume have a clue have everything under control, right? So I'm
the first one.
It's a healthy,
it all looks good from the outside, and then you get in it.
It's a healthy mix, though. And that's like the beauty of it too, is that you can help everyone regardless of where they are on that spectrum, right? Like whether you're a business owner who's been around for 30 years, or you're 20-year-olds out of school, like having your first job and you're on day one, all you have is debt, right? You're going to have questions that pertain to your plan, whether or not you have one already in place. But usually once we show them what we can do, there's like the simple question is like, okay, how do I start, or where do I start, right? And like the answer is just a conversation, right? It's just a matter of let's sit down, see what's important to you, like what do you have in motion right now, like where do you want to go in the next couple of years or long term, and then we start our planning process. So the most common question is just how do we start? And it's easy because it's just a matter of just sitting down and just learning about the person, which I think is huge, especially with, I know my practice in IG is, it's not just a matter of, how do we grow your money and like just focus on the dollar value? How do you get from A to B and be as rich as possible, right? Because life's not linear like that. Like stuff's going to happen in the middle, right? So, how do you engage the client more? Like what's important to you? Like what do you want out of life? Like do you want rental properties? Do you want to go on vacations? Do you want to set something up for your kids, right? What happens if there's a second kid and things like that? So being able to, provide someone with like an adaptable plan that can accommodate for life's changes is huge. And I love seeing that, like that stress relief for people where you show them this is what a plan looks like. And you're like, by the way, this is not what it's going to look like in 10, 15 years because, stuff's going to happen. But like having something that's flexible and that, they can be involved with is huge. I know like, back when you hear from your advisor once every year or two, maybe, RSP season comes around, like, how's it going? I'm your advisor. Whereas I know IG kind of encourages, meeting with your clients, quarterly. So my clients are always involved in the process, which makes them involved in their finance, which makes them, understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
So, they're able to ask more questions, not just what are we doing, but hey, what happens if we do this? Or, what, this came up. Let's throw it in, right? So it's just about starting. And then once you've started and you have a plan, it's very easy to adapt and accommodate for, the things that life will throw at you.
Yeah. I was blown away, just to give some context from a user perspective, was how much work you guys did in terms of overall finances for my personal. It was nice because it was all the different aspects of my investments, and it wasn't just like give us your money and us manage it, which I think a lot of people have the misconception of, which is kind of I don't have investing money, right?
Yeah.
It's not investing money, right? It's planning your future and planning for success, and I thought it blew me away, honestly, especially like. You don't think you have money until you realize that you can put away $50 or $100 a week or a month, whatever it is.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just saving to knock off debt, which I have a lot of people of who are just out of school or like medical professionals or legal professionals where it's like, okay, I'm going to make good money in 5-6 years, but I got $100,000 in debt right now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's tackle that, right? So that's still a part of your plan, whether or not it's going to be used for long term. If it's meant for, knocking off debt, that's pretty damn important too, right? So, that's huge. It's just, getting started and then, having a focus like for us on tax efficiency, right? So, make your money work for you so that you can utilize it, sooner. And when you do want to use it, you're paying less to the government, which is always nice. So that kind of efficiency in your planning, is monumental, monstrous for like your long-term, implications and income is, I want to grow my money, but I want to keep my money too.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of planning is huge. And that's where we focus, whether you're personal or corporate or a combination of them both is, how do you make your money work for you, but work for you smart as well.
Yeah. So just so everyone understands, like, now you used to meet me at the gym at 6. What's the day-to-day look like for you? I know this summer you got out on the bicycle a little bit, but what's your day-to-day? What's a typical day-to-day for Matt?
Yeah. Like you said, like summer was nice because I would wake up. I'm an early bird, just like you. Like I'm the most productive in the morning. So I'd be up early. I like going for my early bike ride. Now it's more so a workout or a walk, whatever it may be. Maybe not good life now because it sucks with that 10-person limit. But,
Yeah.
But I like to wake up early, and I always time block my day.
Time blocking.
Yeah, like your days can very easily get away from you if you kind of just let things just happen as they do. I find I'm most productive in the morning. I also find you're less likely to get bothered by people early in the morning. So get your most important tasks done. So I block off 5 10-minute time slots for, emails, phone calls, follow-ups, planning, whatever it may be. So if I'm done, 20 items by, 1, 2 p.m., perfect. Now I have a couple hours that can be allotted for, preparing for another meeting or meeting with one of my specialists, or if an emergency comes in from my client or they want us to run some numbers, I have the time to do it without worrying about how it's going to impact my day. So I usually find structure my day to be as productive as possible, as early as possible is nice, given I do have meetings in the evenings or in the afternoons as well. But I find getting those important tasks done first is huge.
Yeah.
And then you're less likely to get thrown off track. It's just something goes sideways down the day. And then if there's a couple of tasks at the end of the day that didn't get done, that's the first thing I do tomorrow. Yeah. So I make sure I'm always prepared. I don't go like to bed before planning my next day. But I like the idea of time blocking, like down to the minutes. I know some people don't want to be that stingent, which is fine, but it's good to have it planned. Plus, when you're going about your day and you're crossing things off a list, and you see, by noon I've knocked off 10 things, that's self-motivating to keep going as well, right? Because you're seeing how much you've done so far and like, okay, let's knock off these last 5, as opposed to just having it in your mind and then being like, oh, I forgot to do that today, and that was pretty big. So like write it down, time block it, and then like kind of reward yourself by crossing it off, saying I did this.
That's such good advice. I'm working on that right now, actually. Just with everything else going on, again, I'm most productive in the morning, get it all crushed out. Afternoon can be, site visit or, calling clients, stuff like that, follow-ups. So what advice would you give to the young person, trying to follow their passion or jumping into something new?
Yeah, like you have to be relentless. Like you have to, yeah, you just have to be relentless. Like you have to like understand, as cliche as it is, like you're going to fail, but like you don't know what success is until you failed. So like it's a part of the process. Just learn from it, grow from it. And kind of like what I said earlier, like along the way, like take a second to like appreciate what you've done so far, which is huge. But like just believe in what you do, and just keep pushing forward. Like things are not going to be easy all the time. But that's, part of why you enjoy those good moments so much, is because you overcome some hurdles, and then you're able to, appreciate what you've done and the accomplishments that you've made. So just like keep your nose down, be relentless.
I love that. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, guys, Guest Life Podcast, episode 18. We always want to ask the question, why not me? Why not now? You have to take the first step in any journey. And guys like Matt are just a perfect example of hard work and relentlessness paying off. So we're so happy to have him on the show and get some insights. We've got all his Instagram handles and everything if you want to reach out to Matt from IG, if you're thinking about finance, or if you want to go back and look at some of his pictures where he looks like Hulk Hogan. Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. Your time is always appreciated.
No, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
All right.